The Krell Ascendancy. The Krell Dominion had ruled through fear for 800 years. Across 12 sectors of the galaxy, their name was whispered with the kind of reverence reserved for natural disasters, inevitable, unstoppable, merciless. Entire civilizations had risen and fallen beneath their crimson banners. Worlds that resisted were reduced to ash and silence. Worlds that surrendered were stripped of resources and dignity, their populations enslaved or conscripted into the endless Krell war machine. The Krell themselves were born for war. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies were covered in thick, segmented armor-like exoskeletons that could deflect most small arms' fire. For arms, each corded with muscle that could crush steel, extended from their massive torsos. Their faces were nightmares given form, elongated skulls with 3 sets of eyes that could see across multiple spectrums, mandibles that could tear through bone, and a crown of horns that marked their rank and kills. They breathed methane-rich atmospheres naturally, but their environmental suits allowed them to survive anywhere, turning every world into a potential battlefield. But it wasn't their physical prowess that made them truly terrifying. It was their philosophy. Strength through dominance. Dominance through victory. Victory through absolute force. The 3 tenets of Krell society had guided them since their primitive ancestors first looked to the stars. They had no art that didn't glorify war. No music that didn't celebrate conquest. No poetry that didn't sing of enemies crushed beneath their feet. Every Krell child was raised in combat creches from the age of 3, learning to kill before they learned to read their own language. War Marshal Thrakenar embodied this philosophy perfectly. At 63 cycles, roughly equivalent to 90 human years, he was a living legend within the Dominion. His exoskeleton bore the scars of 1,000 battles, each one carefully preserved rather than healed, a testament to his survival and ferocity. The 4 horns crowning his skull were longer than any other Krell's, carved with the names of worlds he had personally conquered. 40 campaigns. 40 victories. 0 defeats. He stood now in the War Council chamber aboard the dreadnought Harbinger of Ruin, his primary arms clasped behind his back while his secondary arms gestured at the holographic display before him. 16 other Krell commanders surrounded the table, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. The humans, Thrakenar growled, his voice like gravel scraping across metal, represent an opportunity. One of the younger commanders, Kresh Tau, leaned forward. They are a young species, War Marshal. Barely 300 years into space travel. Their colonies are scattered, poorly defended. Why waste the Dominion's resources on such insignificant prey? Thrakenar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Precisely because they are young, Commander. We have spent decades fighting the Vorgoth Collective, the Selenian Empire, the Draken Confederacy, all established powers with entrenched defenses. These conflicts are tiresome. Expensive. The Emperor grows impatient with wars that last years instead of weeks. He manipulated the holographic display, bringing up a map of human space. Dozens of colony worlds glittered like scattered jewels across 6 systems. The humans are expanding rapidly. Terraforming. Settling. Building. Left unchecked, they will become a regional power within a century. But now they are vulnerable. Their fleets are small, their military doctrine untested against a true power. We can sweep through their space in months, claim their worlds, and add their industrial capacity to our own. And their response? Another commander asked. What response? Thrakenar's 3 sets of eyes gleamed. Earth, their homeworld, is the only planet with significant defenses. Their colonies are protected by system defense platforms and a handful of patrol corvettes. We will strike so quickly, so decisively, that Earth won't even have time to mount a rescue. By the time they rally their forces, we will control everything beyond their home system. He zoomed the display onto a single world, lush and green, wrapped in white clouds. We begin here. Eden's Gate. The holographic data scrolled beside the planet, population 2.3 million, primary industries agriculture and terraforming technology, military presence minimal, 3 orbital platforms and 2 corvettes on patrol rotation. It was perfect. Eden's Gate is their second most populated colony after New Terra, Thrakenar explained. Destroying it will send a message that will echo through all of human space. Surrender, or watch your worlds burn one by one. Kreshtal studied the data with growing excitement. When do we move, War Marshal? The fleet is already assembled. 60 warships, including the Harbinger. We depart within the hour. Thrakenar straightened to his full imposing height. Prepare your warriors, commanders. This will be a short campaign. The humans will learn what every species before them has learned: the Krell do not negotiate. The Krell do not compromise. The Krell dominate, or they annihilate. The commanders saluted in unison, their secondary arms striking their chest plates with resonating booms. For the Dominion. For the Dominion, Thrakenar echoed. But his eyes remained fixed on the holographic image of Eden's Gate, already imagining the orbital fires that would soon consume it. Eden's Gate had been named for good reason. From orbit, it looked like paradise. Vast oceans of crystalline blue separated 3 major continents covered in emerald forests and golden plains. The atmosphere was nearly perfect for human habitation, oxygen-rich, clean, with weather patterns that rarely turned violent. The planet's slightly lower gravity made everything feel lighter, easier. Children growing up here were taller than their Earth-born counterparts, stronger, healthier. In the capital city of New Hope, morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the carefully planned streets. The city had been designed with both function and beauty in mind, parks and green space interwoven with residential districts, solar panels that doubled as artistic installations, buildings that seemed to grow organically from the landscape rather than dominate it. Governor Sarah Chin stood on her office balcony, watching the city wake up. At 47, she still marveled at what they'd built here. 20 years ago, this had been untamed wilderness. Now, 2.3 million people called Eden's Gate home. Farmers growing food that fed a dozen other colonies. Scientists pushing the boundaries of terraforming technology. Artists creating works inspired by alien sunsets. Families raising children who knew nothing of Earth's overcrowded cities and polluted skies. This was humanity's dream made real. Governor. Her aide, Marcus Rivera, stepped onto the balcony, his usual calm demeanor cracked by worry. You need to see this. Chen followed him inside to the operations center, where the night shift was frantically working their stations. The main screen displayed a sensor readout that made her blood run cold. What am I looking at? She asked, though she already knew. Long-range sensors picked them up 40 minutes ago, Marcus said. We've been trying to verify, but... Governor, it's 60 ships. Military configuration. Unknown origin. They'll be in orbit within 6 hours. Chen's mouth went dry. 60 ships. Eden's Gate's entire defense consisted of 3 orbital platforms and the patrol corvettes Vigilance and Guardian, which were currently on the far side of the system. Have we attempted contact? Yes, ma'am. All standard frequencies. No response. Then send on emergency channels. Every first contact protocol we have. Get me Admiral Hawthorne at Fleet Command. And start evacuation procedures for... Governor, the sensor officer interrupted, her voice shaking. We're receiving a transmission. Audio only. Translating now. The speaker crackled, and then a voice emerged, deep, grinding, utterly inhuman. Human colony of Eden's Gate. I am War Marshal Thrakenar of the Krell Dominion. Your world is now property of the Dominion. You have 24 of your hours to surrender unconditionally. All weapons will be deactivated. All citizens will report to designated collection points. Resistance will result in complete orbital annihilation. This is your only warning. The transmission ended, leaving the operations center in stunned silence. Marcus found his voice first. Krell. I've never even heard of. Find out everything you can, Chen ordered, her mind racing. History, capabilities, previous conflicts. I want to know who we're dealing with. She turned to her communications officer. Get me fleet command. Priority Alpha. Tell them we need immediate military assistance. Governor. The communications officer said quietly, Fleet command is 6 weeks away at maximum burn. Even if they dispatched a fleet right now. I know, Chen said, forcing her voice to remain steady. But we have to try. Send the distress call. Then get me the colony council. We need to make decisions quickly. As her staff scrambled to their tasks, Chen looked at the sensor display showing 60 red dots descending toward her world like a plague of locusts. 60 warships against their pitiful defenses. 24 hours before obliteration. She thought of the children she'd seen playing in Central Park yesterday. The families eating breakfast right now, unaware that their world was about to end. The dreams and hopes of 2.3 million people about to be reduced to ash. We're not surrendering, she said suddenly. Marcus looked at her in shock. Governor, you heard them. If we resist. If we surrender, we're slaves or worse, Chen said. I've read enough history to know how conquerors treat the conquered. We fight. We evacuate as many civilians as we can. We make them pay for every inch. And we pray that someone, somewhere, hears our distress call and comes. Against 60 warships. Marcus's voice cracked. Sarah, that's suicide. Governor Chen looked her old friend in the eyes. Then we die free. Start the evacuation. Priority to children and families. Get them to the southern continent bunkers. Military-age volunteers report to defensive positions. And Marcus? She paused. Tell them the truth. Tell them we're probably going to die. But tell them we'll die on our feet, protecting the world we built. The Krell Armada arrived with terrible precision. One moment, the skies of Eden's Gate were clear. The next, 60 massive warships materialized from quantum drive, their dark hulls blotting out the stars. Each ship was a monument to destructive capacity, bristling with weapons, armored in alloys that could withstand nuclear explosions, powered by cores that burned hotter than small suns. The Harbinger of Ruin took position directly above New Hope, its shadow falling across the city like a shroud. On the bridge, War Marshal Thrakenar studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human orbital platforms had activated but were already hopelessly outgunned. The 2 patrol corvettes were burning hard toward the planet but wouldn't arrive in time to make any difference. The humans are broadcasting again, War Marshal, his communications officer reported. Let me hear it. Governor Chen's voice filled the bridge, steady despite the circumstances. To the commander of the alien fleet. This is Governor Sarah Chen of Eden's Gate. We are a peaceful colony. We have no quarrel with you. Please, explain what you want. We can negotiate. Negotiations are for equals, Thrakenar interrupted, opening a channel. You are not our equals. You are prey that does not yet understand it is in a predator's jaws. There is no negotiation. There is only surrender or death. He paused, his mandibles clicking. You have 24 hours. Choose wisely, human. My patience is not infinite. He closed the channel and turned to his tactical officer. Status of their defenses? Minimal, War Marshal. 3 orbital platforms with antiquated missile systems. 2 corvettes, approximately 4,000 tons each. No capital ships within 6 systems. No reinforcements possible within 4 weeks. And their surface defenses? Scattered anti-aircraft emplacements. Some ground-based rail guns. Nothing that could threaten our landing forces. If they choose to fight, we could pacify the planet within hours. Thrakenar nodded slowly. But they won't fight. Humans are weak. Soft. I've studied them. They value individual lives over collective strength. They will see the impossibility of victory and surrender. They always do. Kreshtal stepped forward. And if they don't, War Marshal? Then we demonstrate what happens to species who defy the Dominion. Thrakenar's 3 sets of eyes gleamed with anticipation. We burn their cities until the screaming stops. We make such an example of Eden's Gate that every other human world surrenders without firing a shot. Either way, in 24 hours, this world belongs to the Krell. 22 hours later, as the deadline approached, the people of Eden's Gate had made their choice. The evacuation had moved as many civilians as possible, nearly 400,000 children, elderly, and non-combatants, into hardened bunkers in the southern continent. They would survive the initial bombardment, at least for a while. The rest, 1.9 million people, had stayed. Governor Chen stood in the emergency command center, surrounded by hastily organized militia leaders, the remaining military personnel, and volunteers who'd never held a weapon before yesterday. Outside, every able-bodied person was manning defensive positions, ready to face an enemy they couldn't possibly defeat. The platforms are ready, Admiral Zhao reported. He commanded Eden's Gate's pitiful space navy from the orbital platform Sentinel. We've armed everything we have. When they come, we'll give them hell for as long as we can. The ground defenses are positioned, added Colonel Mbeki, who'd been training farmers and teachers to operate anti-aircraft guns for the past 20 hours. It won't be enough, but we'll make them remember us. Chen looked at the faces around her, afraid, determined, resigned. They're going to expect us to surrender. When we don't, they're going to kill us all. Everyone understands that. Nods around the table. Then let's make it count. When they tell the story of Eden's Gate, I want them to remember that humans don't break. We don't kneel. Even at the end, we stand. The countdown timer on the wall reached 0. On the harbinger of ruin, Thrakenar waited for the surrender transmission that never came. Instead, the 3 human orbital platforms opened fire. Primitive missiles streaked toward the Krell fleet, dozens of them, burning bright against the black. They were outdated, slow by Krell standards, but they represented humanity's defiance. The Krell point defense system swatted them from space like insects, but Thrakenar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Surprise. They're actually fighting, Kreshtal said, disbelief evident in his voice. Thrakenar's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Then we kill them. All weapons, target the platforms and the city below. Show these humans the price of defiance. 60 Krell warships powered their weapons simultaneously. Plasma cannons that could melt through starship hulls. Mass drivers that launched projectiles at relativistic speeds. Energy weapons that could boil oceans. The orbital platform Sentinel, Guardian, and Defiance lasted 47 seconds before they were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The 2 corvettes, Vigilance and Guardian, fared slightly better, 93 seconds before they were shattered by coordinated fire. And then the Krell fleet turned their weapons on New Hope. Fire, Thrakenar commanded. The first salvo was meant to be apocalyptic. Meant to erase the human capital in a single, devastating strike. Meant to break their spirit and end the battle before it truly began. But before the weapons could discharge, a new alarm shrieked across the bridge. Quantum signature, the sensor officer shouted. Single ship, emerging at the system's edge. Thrakenar whirled to the tactical display. There, at maximum sensor range, a single contact blinked into existence. Vessel composition, he demanded. Analyzing. War Marshal, it's human. Terran military classification. Battleship class. Designation reading as. The officer's voice wavered. USS Vengeance. 1 ship. Thrakenar's initial surprise turned to contempt. The humans had sent 1 ship against his 60. It was either an act of supreme arrogance or complete insanity. Maintain targeting on the city, he ordered. Dispatch 10 ships to intercept and destroy this. Vengeance. I want to watch it die before we burn their world. But even as he gave the order, the Vengeance began moving. Not toward the intercept force. Not a way to escape. Directly toward the center of his formation. At a speed that should have been impossible. What is that vessel's acceleration? Thrakkenar demanded. 300 gravities, War Marshal. And increasing. 300 gravities. No ship should be able to pull that kind of acceleration without turning its crew into paste. The Krell's own dreadnought could barely manage 180. Receiving transmission from the human vessel, the communications officer reported. Put it through. A human voice came over the speakers, calm, cold, and utterly without fear. Krell Fleet. This is Captain Jake Sullivan of the USS Vengeance. You have 60 seconds to break orbit and leave this system. This is your only warning. 60 seconds. Starting now. Thrakkenar stared at the tactical display, at the single ship accelerating toward his armada like a missile. The arrogance. The audacity. The sheer, incomprehensible stupidity. And then, for the first time in his 40 campaigns, War Marshal Thrakkenar began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound.